Hello, my name is Veronica and welcome to Brown Girl Financial Freedom. This video is part 3 of a 5-series video where we talk about how to track your expenses. We previously talked about 3 easy ways that you can use to start tracking your expenses, and in this specific video we're going to talk about how to categorize those expenses that you've been tracking since our last video. Now, the reason you want to make sure that you categorize your spending is because the outcome will provide you with clarity. You want to know where that money's going, and you also want to prevent from overspending in areas that are either harmful or wasteful. You are going to find that there are so many ways to categorize spending. Ultimately, that's going to be up to you to decide not only how many categories you want to have when you're tracking your expenses, but also how much money is going to go into each category on a monthly or a weekly basis. So that's going to be up to you, but I'm actually going to show you a very basic way to begin tracking your expenses into specific categories. That way it provides you a little bit of guidance, especially if you're just beginning to track your expenses. All right, so first up, our first category of spending is going to be of a high priority. So these are going to be expenses that you need to survive and to thrive in society. So these are going to be things like housing, insurance, savings, or an emergency fund, of course, loans, any type of debt that you have that has to be a high priority, and food, of course, can't forget about food, and any other expenses that you feel fit into this category. Now, something that you'll notice about these high priority expenses is that they're set. They tend to be continuous. They tend to be, the same cost either month to month, and they come around at the same time. Of course, it's very important to have food, shelter, and clothing, but the reason I slip in debt into there, any type of loan, any type of debt that you have as a high priority, is because that's really what's going to help you thrive in society. Loans is going to affect you negatively in so many ways. So we need to cut that out of our life to make sure that we're reaching our financial goals. I personally didn't really have much savings or an emergency fund. Well, I did, but it was very, very tiny. But the reason for that is because when I started working in a professional setting, I, of course, went to a lot of schooling and I carried that debt with me. And for some time, I was saving my money, but I realized what a heavy, heavy burden it is to have debt. And I just realized that that's something that needed to be paid off, or otherwise I was going to be so stressful all the time. And once I did that, it completely changed my life. So my advice for anyone, as someone who had a huge amount of student debt, is we need to cut that out. And that is really what's going to help you thrive in society. You don't want it to affect you negatively. You don't want it bringing down your credit score. You want to move up in life. And that's what's really going to help you. So don't let that stop you from reaching your financial goals. Make sure it's a high priority. Get that taken care of early on. Moving on to category number 2 is going to be expenses of medium priority. So once our high category expenses are taken care of, then we can look at other things that enhance our lives in some way. So our medium category, again, it's not going to be something that you need to survive or to thrive necessarily in society, but it does enhance your life in some way. It actually brings value, right? This is something that it really brings joy, it brings happiness, and it really helps you day to day in life. So some of these are going to include cosmetics or beauty products. This is also going to include things like gym memberships or social outings and entertainment. This is also going to include subscriptions, things that you use like Netflix or Amazon Prime, things like that, and any other expense that you feel fits into this category. Okay, so again, it's medium, it's not high priority. Once your high priority expenses, we need those taken care of. So once those are taken care of, then we can figure out what we find valuable and what we actually like and brings joy to us. And yes, we can spend some money, again, so long as our high priorities are taken care of. For me personally, a expense that I have that would be of medium category is going to be a cosmetic one. I don't know if you can actually see, but I get procedures done for acne scarring. That's definitely not a high priority, and I also wouldn't call that a low priority. For me, that's in the middle ground, because that's truly something that helps me with my self-esteem. That's something that helps me feel better about myself. That's something that I can afford. So that's why I choose to spend it, and it's not something that I do on a regular basis. You know, it's like every quarter or something like that. And it's not even every year. So every now and then when I do get the chance, you know, to go to my dermatologist and to make that appointment, even though it's expensive, I make sure to budget for that on a monthly basis so that when it is time to have my appointment, I have my money for it. Because to me, that is something that is important. Let's discuss now our third and final category that is going to help you figure out where your money goes and what you're going to do with all your expenses and all the spending that you've been tracking. Now, this category is going to be of low priority, right? So these are not going to be things that you need to survive. They're not going to be things necessarily that even bring value to your life, right? And they may even be harmful. They may be expenses also that you cannot afford. So these are definitely going to be low priority, and even spending that, you know, you're going to want to cut out at this point. Once you see the low priority spending, especially if you don't have enough money to trickle all the way down to your low priority spending, this is what you want to cut out first. Low priority spending is going to include things such as convenience or fast food, luxury items like luxury clothing, luxury cosmetics. This is also going to include vehicles that require you to take out a loan that you cannot afford. We have a couple items that some people might not like or it might strike a nerve with. Now we're going to include things, again, this is still low priority spending. This is going to be things like cigarettes, things like alcohol, or gambling. We want our high priority expenses to be taken care of. And then if we have some wiggle room, we'll have expenses that are of medium priority, but our low expenses, again, these are things that you either don't need. You don't need extremely expensive, extremely high-end things in your life, or extremely expensive purses and clothing and cigarettes, alcohol, any sort of substance that is very expensive that, you know, it really does affect your mental and your physical health, is going to be of a low priority. And I know that that's going to be hard to hear for some people. And other things like gambling too. There is a lot of people who have like addictions and they just lose a lot of money. And in order to honestly live a financial freedom life, we have to cut those out of our life. Those are money drainers. They drain our mental state. They drain our physical health. We lose relationships, and we don't want any of that. Low priority expenses are also going to be things that just mysteriously make your money disappear. All right. So that's why we're tracking our expenses. We don't want any money to disappear. We want all our money organized, categorized. Again, that way you can clearly see where all your money is going, right? We don't want to... Speaking from experience, way back years ago, when I was not tracking my expenses, I would a lot of times carry cash, or I would just use my card, and literally days would go by, weeks would go by, and even months. And I would, because I was not tracking my spending, I would ask myself, wow, where did my money go? I always thought I had a certain amount of money, but because I was not tracking any of it or budgeting any of it, somehow some of it would mysteriously disappear, right? So once we track it and then we realize what our spending is, we can just fit it into here as a low priority, right? Because we don't need it in our lives. And again, once our high priority expenses are taken care of, then we could do some of the medium, but the low priority should not be often at all. The low priority expenses should be rarely spent. But again, that really is going to be up to you to decide what categories you want, what spending you want to keep, which ones you want to cut out, and how much money is going to go into each category. At the end of the day, this video is meant to give you a guide, right? These are just basics to get you going right after you started tracking all your expenses so that you have clarity and you're able to move forward and knowing what to do with your spending. And there you have it. Now you have a very basic outline on how to categorize the spending that you've been jotting down since our last video. Seeing all your expenses fit into each category will invite you to evaluate all your spending. It is critical to analyze your spending because that's what's going to help you decide if your spending aligns with your financial goals and if it's going to help you reach your financial freedom. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing and hitting the notification icon. That way you are notified every time I post. Stay tuned for part 4 of this series where we discuss how to cut out unwanted spending for good so you reach your financial freedom. Until next time, you don't have to be brown to turn your money frown upside down. Bye.